I didn't know I was waiting for her until she appeared. The night in Pattaya shimmered with lights, smelling of salt and smoke from street grills. I wandered along the boulevard by the beach, gazing at the faces, the hustle and bustle of a city that never slept. It seemed that everything here was made for entertainment. Music from the bars, enticing glances from the girls, the sweet aroma of mangoes from street stalls. But in this chaos, I was searching for something else, perhaps not even knowing what exactly. She appeared suddenly, tall, with jet black hair, in a crimson dress that seemed to melt in the neon glow. Her eyes, deep, dark, slightly mocking, lingered on me longer than a casual encounter would require. Before I could say a word, she whispered, "Were you looking for me?" I opened my mouth, but I couldn't find an answer. She only smiled and nodded toward an alley. "Let's go." And I followed. We ended up in a bar, hidden behind a labyrinth of narrow streets. The place was almost empty, with only an old man sitting at a distant table, his skin covered in tattoos. The girl sat across from me, not taking her eyes off me. "Do you know who I am?" she asked. I shook my head. "Then why did you come?" "You called me," I confessed honestly. She laughed, sipping a golden cocktail from her glass. "My name is Lena, and if you want to know me, you'll have to learn to listen." I listened. About how she was born in a small village in northern Thailand, how she ran away to Pattaya at 17, how she learned to read people, their desires, fears. Her voice was like music, soothing and mesmerizing. I didn't notice when the bar emptied, when the night changed to a pre-dawn mist. "It's time for me to go," Lena said, standing up. "Will you come with me?" "Where to?" She only smiled. I found myself in her world. This was not just romance, not just passion. Lena was a mystery I was diving deeper into. We wandered through street markets, rode motorcycles along the coastline. She took me to temples where thousands of candles burned. But the more I learned about her, the more I realized that behind her laughter, behind her playful hints, there was something more. One night, I woke up in her apartment and saw her sitting by the window, looking at the sea. Moonlight silvered her hair. I called her, but she didn't respond. Then I approached and heard her soft whisper, "Soon." "What soon?" I asked. She turned around, and in her eyes was fear. "You've gone too deep. Sometimes it's better not to know." After that, everything changed. Lena was still around, but her laughter became rarer, her touches more cautious. And the further we went, the more I felt that something invisible stood between us. And then she disappeared. She left only a note. "If you truly want to know the truth, find me where the road ends." And I set out to find her. The road led me beyond the noisy Pattaya. I was riding a rented motorcycle, following broken clues. Where the road ends. Maybe she was talking about the old pier I had seen on the maps, or the abandoned temple outside the city. I didn't know, but I had no choice. First, I went to the pier. The wind drove the waves, and the boards beneath my feet creaked as if preparing to collapse into the depths. But Lena was not there. The abandoned temple seemed more likely. Its walls were covered with tree roots, and inside, amidst the ruins, stood an ancient altar. On it lay a scarlet piece of cloth. The color was exactly the same as Lena's dress that night. I picked it up and heard footsteps. Slow, cautious. "You found me," Lena's voice rang out. She emerged from the shadow, the same as before, but there was no longer any playfulness in her eyes. They were filled with sorrow. "Why did you leave?" I asked. She stepped closer, ran her fingers along my cheek. Because otherwise, you wouldn't have understood. Understood what? She sighed heavily. There are things that can't be explained. They can only be seen. And now, you will see. Candles lit up in the temple, though I couldn't see who had lit them. The shadows around us stirred, as if coming to life. Lena, what is this? I stepped back, but she firmly grabbed my hand. Don't be afraid. Everything you wanted to know will be revealed to you now. The darkness around us thickened, and I realized that there was no way out, only forward. A flash of light blinded me. When I was finally able to open my eyes, the temple had changed. It no longer looked abandoned. The candles burned steadily. The air was filled with the scent of lotuses and sandalwood. Lena stood nearby, but now her crimson dress looked different. It was embroidered with gold, and her hair was adorned with thin silver threads. "What is this?" I asked. "A world that was once," she whispered. "You've entered the past." I looked around. People in ancient clothes walked through the temple. Strange chants filled the air. I realized that I was no longer in the 21st century. "Lena, what have you done?" She looked into my eyes, and in her gaze was something ancient, eternal. "You wanted to know the truth. Now you must make a choice. Stay here or return, but forget me forever." Time froze. At that moment, I had to decide my fate. I took a step back, feeling the walls of the temple breathe under the pressure of an invisible force. Lena extended her hand to me, her eyes shining in the light of the candles. "If you leave," she whispered, "you will never remember me." I closed my eyes. I had to make a choice, one that would change everything. I took a step forward. A flash of light blinded me, and in the next moment, I felt the world around me dissolve. The space vibrated, and everything spiraled into a whirlwind of shadows and light. I lost my orientation, but I knew this was not the end. When I opened my eyes again, the temple was gone. All that surrounded me was thick white fog. The silence pressed on my ears, and only a faint whisper echoed in the distance. "You're still here?" I turned and saw Lena. She stood before me, but now she seemed different, more ethereal, as if woven from the fog itself. Her eyes glowed, and her long hair flowed as though underwater. "Where are we?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Between worlds," she answered. "This is a place where past and future meet." I looked around, but saw nothing but emptiness. "How do I get back?" Lena stepped forward, her hand touching my chest. "You've already made your choice. Now you must learn the truth to the end." I wanted to protest, but at that moment, the fog cleared, and I found myself in a different place. This was neither Pattaya nor the Thailand I knew. Majestic temples stretched around me, surrounded by massive trees with golden leaves. People in ancient robes walked slowly along stone paths, and soft chants filled the air. "This is a world that has been forgotten," Lena spoke. "It no longer exists, but you can see it." "Why me?" I gasped. Lena looked at me with sorrow. "Because you are needed. Because you must understand who I was." I looked at her closely. At that moment, I understood. Lena was part of this world, its shadow, its echo. But what happened to it? Why did it disappear? Suddenly, the air thickened, and a dull thud rang out above us. The stone walls began to tremble, and the chants turned into alarmed shouts. People below scattered in panic. "They found us," Lena whispered. "Who?" I asked, but the answer was not needed. Figures appeared from the shadows. Their faces were concealed by masks, and their movements were swift, almost inhuman. They surrounded us. "Give him to us," one of them's voice rang out. "He shouldn't have come here." Lena squeezed my hand. "Run!" she shouted, but I couldn't leave her alone. I clenched my fists, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The masked figures moved forward, their movements smooth but threateningly fast. I stepped back, feeling the cold seep into my bones. Lena made a gesture, and glowing symbols appeared in the air. They trembled, as though trying to hold an unknown force in place. "You shouldn't have brought him here," one of the attackers spoke, his voice echoing across the space. "You know the consequences." "He made his choice," Lena replied firmly, "and now it's his fate." The figures paused, as though evaluating the situation, and then one of them lunged forward. Lena raised her hand sharply, and a burst of light appeared in the air. The attacker flew back, but the others didn't stop. I couldn't stay on the sidelines any longer. Everything inside me protested against being a pawn in this game, but I knew that now was not the time to ask questions. I grabbed Lena's hand. "We can't fight them forever. We need an escape. Trust me." Lena closed her eyes, and in the next moment, the air around us began to condense, turning into a whirlwind of golden light. I felt the ground beneath my feet give way. The world began to collapse again, and at the last moment, I heard the muffled cries of the attackers. Then we disappeared. I woke up to silence. Around me was once again fog, but this time it seemed different, thicker, almost tangible. I struggled to get to my feet and looked around. "Lena?" I called. She stood nearby, breathing heavily. Her skin looked pale, and her eyes glowed with a strange light. "We can't stay here," she whispered. "We made too big a jump." "Where did we end up?" Lena closed her eyes, her lips moving soundlessly. Then she looked at me. "We're at the very beginning, in a world where nothing has happened yet, but not for long." I didn't understand what she meant, but her voice sounded serious. In the distance, a low rumble echoed, reminiscent of the beats of a giant heart. "They're coming for us," Lena said, "and now we have only one path." She grabbed my hand and pulled me forward, through the thick veil of fog. In the distance, the silhouette of a temple began to appear, but this time, it looked new, untouched by time. "This is where it all started," she said, "and here we must finish it." I felt my heart pounding in my chest. We were approaching the resolution, but I still didn't understand exactly what that meant. The story will continue